listening to Cinemajaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location from Cinemajaw Studios in Chicago. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is...
Rye the Movie Guy, and joining us is KP.
Hello, how are you both this evening?
KP under the weather, so joining us via Zoom.
Was going to say, we're great, KP, but you sound like shit.
I sound horrible. I hate it. But thank you for commenting.
You're welcome. I hope you feel better.
Definitely hope you feel better, KP. Maybe we can find an ancient relic that can help KP.
Yeah, something with magical powers?
Right. That's what we're covering this week on Cinemajaw. Our top 5 favorite ancient relic or treasure that they find. I always love this element in movies. Something that they uncover that leads them to a mystical place or unleashes a power. Those kinds of things.
Or it leads to the map, which leads to the key that leads to the chest that contains the ancient relic.
Right.
Right.
Now we're talking like a good Nick Cage movie.
Or Indiana Jones.
Right. We're doing that top 5 list in honor of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which we'll be reviewing this week, in which there is a relic found. In addition to that, we also have a second review.
You know what we call these things, Ryan? MacGuffins.
MacGuffins, just like the bar at AMC.
Now you understand why they named it that.
Of course. Absolutely. The second review we have is a screwball comedy. I think it's fair to call it that.
Yeah. Stanicky.
No. Ricky Stanicky.
How dare I?
Yes. Directed by Peter Farrelly, one half of the Farrelly Brothers. So 2 reviews for the Jawheads.
Wow.
That's exciting.
That? Yeah. That makes a lot of sense now that you say it, that only one of the Farrelly brothers directed it.
Well, we'll get to that.
It's a bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah, we'll discuss. We have no guests this week, so we are going to stump the Kabinski. Believe it or not, wrapping up our Dan Aykroyd month. This is our last month of Dan Aykroyd.
Nabs, unacceptable.
And because of that, we are going to play Dan Aykroyd movie trivia, stump the Kabinski style.
Wow. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Remember how we talked about doing like little Cinemajaw bets?
Yeah.
I'm going to place 1 unit of my Cinemajaw credit on this game.
That's worth $5.
Should we say $5?
Yeah.
All right. Jawheads, $5 on this.
I accept the bet.
For the record, Matt's on fire tonight. Peeling back the curtain, that Mibs unacceptable was all Matt K. I'm at home.
I don't have cash. You're just going to have to trust me, Ryan. I just checked my wallet. It's bone dry.
How many times I've heard that
not
from
on
Matt.
fire. Matt is confirmed not on fire.
Matt loves this line, man, I don't have any cash. Right when you're about to like pay at the bar.
The funny thing is that's so untrue.
we're at the cash register like, hey, let's get a 12-pack for the recording. Dude, I forgot my wallet.
Yeah, it's in the car. Can you get this one, Rye?
All right.
It's not true, Jawheads.
You're on for $5 on Dan Aykroyd movie trivia.
Well, hopefully that'll make it exciting. Jawheads, place your bets,
I like it. All right, let's kick it off with our last Dan Aykroyd fact. We've learned a lot about this guy. What do we got this week, KP?
Yes. So somehow we've skirted over this. Dan is not a local. Dan Aykroyd is Canadian. How we have overlooked this. He's an iconic Canuck, no less. Born July 1st, 1952 in Ottawa, Canada. Not only is he not from the United States, he is a national treasure in Canada. In 1998, Aykroyd was appointed as a member of the Order of Canada, which is one of the country's highest honors. I have to imagine it's the equivalent of being knighted in the UK. Or like being on
American
I wonder
Idol.
if Canada has like a Sacagawea dollar, but with Dan Aykroyd, or maybe I guess it would be an Aykroyd loony,
a sack of potatoes.
Yeah, a bag of milk. Yeah, and he was recognized for significant contributions in arts and entertainment.
Just like you at Nazareth Academy, right?
We're on a mission from God.
He was on a mission from God, and he succeeded.
Hey, he's one of the best. He's one of the best from Canada.
I'm glad you mentioned it. I have been honored from Nazareth Academy, my high school.
Yeah.
So, wonderful. Good stuff. Me and Dan have that in common. But I knew he was Canadian. I did not know that he had accepted this honor, this high prestige honor. But I did know that he was Canadian.
He's a Canadian knight.
It's awesome.
It is.
Good for Dan Aykroyd.
The Knights of Canada.
I have to say, as we get into our Ghostbusters review here, I enjoyed, and we're going to talk about this, I enjoyed Dan Aykroyd's performance. I think because we were celebrating him on Cinemajaw, and we've been talking about, how he's into all this, occult and ghosts and paranormal, it definitely added to the experience of watching Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I hope the Jawheads that are listening to this maybe experience that same thing. I definitely did while I was sitting in the theater.
Did I tell my Dan Aykroyd story?
Well, you've told it before on Cinemajaw. This is the one where you had dinner with Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've definitely have told it on Cinemajaw before.
I've held back because I have talked about it before, and I thought I had. But just a brief recap for Jawheads. I used to belong to a pretty big bar group here in Chicago. I was doing the marketing for them. And we bought a bunch of Dan Aykroyd's vodka, the Crystal Skull. And we had dinner with Dan Aykroyd, like my entire bar group. There was like 40 of us. And I was at the head of the table with Dan Aykroyd. And it was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Imagine just staring at Dan Aykroyd for 3 hours. And I talked to him about some weird stuff, man. Like, he started talking to me about Herkimer diamonds and all this, like, ancient alien stuff. Like, no kidding. And he got into the Tobin Spirit Guide because at that time, it was way before Ghostbusters Afterlife. So the one question I had for him was, so are we ever going to see a Ghostbusters 3? And like I could see like the stress in his face when I asked him this question. He's like,
this was coming.
It's all tied up in this and that. But then he started talking to me about the Tobin Spirit Guide. So apparently it's a real thing. Like he briefly mentions it in the first Ghostbusters. Like that's where they found the name Zool and this and that. But yeah, he's a strange bird, dude.
He sure is.
What a weird night. He signed my Ghostbusters poster.
That's all you can ask for right there.
Got a great photo with him. Such a nice guy, too. Really nice. Can we toast for dinner.
Do you got that photo? Can we still put that in the show notes,
Of course
maybe?
we can. Hell yeah.
That would be awesome. It is appropriate since it's Dan Aykroyd month. Right?
I think so.
All right. So we celebrated the man because of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Let's get into it. Ryan, who are you going to call again? It's time for another Ghostbusters movie. And there was a day and age when that sentence would have tickled me pink. But we're a long way from 1984. Returning to the cast are Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, and the Man of the Month, Dan Aykroyd, along with all of the people we met in the last movie. Oh, and Patton Oswalt, too. This time, the Ghostbusters must face an ancient god hell-bent on the destruction of the world, starting with their home, like pretty much in all the other movies. Can this nostalgic romp work, or is it busted? Ryan and I dusted off our proton packs and revved up the Ecto-1 once again, eager to dive into the latest spectral shenanigans in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
I've been waiting 40 years for this. They called themselves Ghostbusters. According to these hacks, they saved the world. No eyewitnesses. And who is found to carry the torch? Descendants of Egon Spengler. You have a miner hanging out the side of a moving vehicle, firing a laser gun indiscriminately.
Has a proton pack.
It's completely safe.
I wouldn't say completely safe.
The Ghostbusters are finished.
Right, well, overruled.
Sustained.
Thank you.
I'm going to remove the suspense. I had fun with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I do prefer Afterlife to it, perhaps, but only by a little bit. Here's what I liked. The acting was good, to very good at times. The chemistry among the returning cast was as electric as it ever was. Especially, I want to nod to Aykroyd's expanded role here, adding just a bit of delight to the movie. I really think he was good, and yes, maybe I'm biased because he's the Man of the Month. Even William Atherton's return as Walter Peck brought a smile to my face. Talk about a blast from the past. The newcomers held their own for the most part, with Oswalt's cameo stealing more than a few scenes. I thought one of the funniest sequences in the movie. Although I have to admit, Paul Rudd felt a bit flat to me. And that's a rare thing to say.
That sure is.
And also, McKenna Grace's portrayal of the little Egon, plus her story in general, a bit of a head scratcher. I think she was one of the weak links. But where Ghostbuster Frozen Empire really missed the mark for me was in its plot. Sure, the ancient god villain had a cool design, but talk about a missed opportunity. The buildup was lacking, and by the time the third act rolled around, I couldn't help feel like something was missing. Where was the Gozer level anticipation? We needed that ghost kaiju moment, that epic showdown that leaves you on the edge of your seat. Don't get me wrong, there were plenty of moments that had the superfans in our theater whooping and hollering, and some of the jokes were perfect. And hey, there were even a few decent scenes thrown about with the villain, but overall, I can't help feel like the plot fell short of its potential. Would I be game for a trilogy? You bet your proton pack. After all, who are you going to call?
Who are you going to call? Wow.
What do you think, Ray?
Let me start off my little review here by saying...
I could tell by your face you're about to just annihilate my review.
No, I was going to start off with, I didn't hate it. I think that's the nicest way I can start off this review. I didn't hate it. But there isn't too much here to like either. I praise Dan Aykroyd. I agree. He's a little bit more expanded of a role than the others, Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd. It's just Bill Murray. It's a little bit more than those guys. Which helps it. And as I mentioned, I love that we know that he's really into this stuff.
Are those guys just too old now? Could they not just make a movie about them?
I don't think they're that interested in doing a whole movie.
They're in the freaking movie.
That's my guess, anyways, right?
All right.
And of all the '80s reboots that are coming our way and that we're getting, sequels and rebooted franchises,
Dune.
It seems to me that this one, Ghostbusters, holds on to its nostalgia past more than any of the others by a mile. And by doing this, it hampers the new film for the franchise. It takes the fun out of it, and I don't know if it's giving the franchise a new direction, enough of a new direction, because it's so stuck on itself of congratulating itself on what a great movie the one was in 1984, right? We get damn news clips of them from the original movie, and we get the song. Paul Rudd literally sings the song, or
which would have been funny if it wasn't spoiled in the trailer.
And it's just again with this, let it go already. Enough of this. Get on with a new Ghostbusters adventure. And it feels like by adding all of the old Ghostbusters into it and all the callback jokes, that it doesn't want to get out of the rut that it's in. Go on and just take on a whole new presence. You're right that it didn't have that epic feeling when it came to the conclusion with the villain. The villain looked, and the backstory of the villain, the sound of where the villain was coming from, loved it.
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God, this is going to be great. And then it failed to materialize. And then we get this...
Literally.
This climactic scene that's not even a tenth as good as the one from the original. And here we got all these great practical effects these days. And it's part of it is I didn't know the stakes of what was all at stake here. That hurts a movie when you're talking about the climax of the movie. Did he really...
It was the end of the world, Ryan.
Okay, he froze New York. Did
Right.
all of those New Yorkers die? I don't think so.
No.
Right, they don't show much of that.
They thawed out.
I don't like that. I needed to feel some type of major threat here. And that was lacking completely. And unfortunately, the more I've sat with this movie, the more I'm just unimpressed with it, unfortunately. I didn't hate it, again, but unimpressed.
I'm unimpressed too. I want to say, for the record, I think your criticism on the nostalgia is justified. I remember walking out of the theater and asking you, what else can they possibly mine at this point? It feels like they've tapped everything. Walter Peck, he's back. All the original surviving Ghostbusters, anyway, are back, including Annie Potts. There's two things, Ryan. Two things that they could mine. Ready?
Jeez. Don't give them ideas.
Dana Barrett, Sigourney Weaver, and Louis Tully, Rick fucking Moranis.
And I was hoping, to be honest, that would have been something that would have gotten me excited.
If they get Rick Moranis back, sign me up, baby.
But here's the problem. As you mentioned, there were hardcore fans. I had no idea, Jawheads, that there are different
Whoa,
chapters.
Be careful because they're listening.
I'm sure. There's different chapters of Ghostbusters. What would you
Throughout
call
the
them?
nation.
Yeah, they're Ghostbuster fan groups.
They're fan groups. If you're familiar with the 501st, the Stormtroopers, you might see at Comic-Con and stuff like that. Same thing, but Ghostbusters. They do charity work. They're a great organization.
Right. So they're grown men that dress as the Ghostbusters
and women
and women, and they go to some of these events. And like you said, they raise money for
mostly
charities.
men, yeah.
And they're big at the Comic-Cons and whatnot. I knew that they were out there. I'm not saying I didn't know they existed, but we walked into the movie theater. You were already there. I got in there. There must have been, what would you say, 50 to 100 proton packs in the front of the theater, all up against the big screen. And as I looked around,
that was pretty cool.
In the theater, outside of the press rows for the critics, it was more or less filled with these
Ghostbusters.
And
in uniform, mind you.
In uniform. And at one point, one gets up beforehand and talks about the charity that they're raising money for. And he starts naming the different Ghostbusters groups. And my jaw was on the ground. I'm like, don't these people have lives? I mean, it was like the Ghostbusters of the south side of Chicago on 95th Street. And you get 3 or 4 people screaming and yelling. And then we got the Ghostbusters from Peoria, Illinois. And they're yelling, the Ghostbusters from Logan Square. Like, guys, just do one thing. The Ghostbusters of Chicago would be sufficient.
Oh, this is funny. I'm glad you brought this up because we had this argument on the way out. And I was saying to you, yeah, just like there should just be one baseball team in Chicago. The Cubs.
It's a little different.
It's not.
It is.
It's the same thing.
But, okay, my point on this is they really cheered and I think made the screening a little bit more entertaining than it probably would have been had we not been in with that group. Because they went nuts, and that's always fun to be part of.
Well, they even tipped you off on a few things that you would have blown right by you.
Would have went right over my head. I'm 100% correct on that. There were things that they cheered about, and I was like, oh, that must have been the guy from the first movie. Yes, there definitely was moments like that.
The motorcycle.
But even when the Ghostbusters logo came on, there's cheering going on. So it was fun to be a part of that. But even still, it was kind of dull in the middle. I mean, it was like, boy, did it
sags.
It really sagged, man.
And even Kumail Nanjiani, who's always funny, and he was funny in this, really was kind of misused at the end. Like, his character could have been that gatekeeper, keymaster. They even put him in the pasta helmet, which was a funny scene, but another piece of nostalgia mind. Mm-hmm. But it just didn't connect.
Yeah.
Like, great build-up, cool pieces, really fun to see Ray Stantz and all the other Ghostbusters back again, but it didn't connect together right. I
agree.
The villain was so cool. Didn't he look badass?
Oh, great. I mean,
menacing.
The backstory was fantastic of the villain. Also, the movie opens with like a story on how the villain was trapped and whatnot. Loved all of that. The lore of that worked for me. I was all on board. And I was thinking, well, when we get to this villain finally appearing in New York, this is going to be some scary stuff. It's really going to work. And unfortunately, it just didn't materialize.
I know what this movie was missing. I figured it out, Ryan. A mini boss. A mini boss. You get the demon dogs, the gatekeeper and the keymaster, and they are the mini bosses in that movie. And then you get the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. All these things help to build up Gozer, the Gozerian. Well, geez, if those things are that tough, Gozer must be a real doozy. Even though we only get Gozer for like 35 seconds of the movie, she's menacing.
Sure.
Jumping around, and it's great.
It is.
The original. This didn't have that. It needed that. Even in Afterlife, while I didn't necessarily care for them that much, the mini Stay Puft guys, they kind of were cool,
And they're back in this one.
Yeah.
But it almost felt
too
tacked on in this one.
They're the porgs of the Ghostbusters universe at this point. Yeah.
No doubt. I think the other thing, and I keep going back to this, that when I said I wasn't a huge fan of the Ghostbusters when we went eye for an eye at the beginning of the month, I talked about how it was a great movie. It's so perfect for its time. And a lot of that had to do with, like, look, this thing came out in 1984, the effects where they were, everything was just lined up perfectly for a movie like Ghostbusters.
It truly was.
And now, with the state-of-the-art effects that we have, it's tough to make the exact tone of the movie what it was in 1984, because the opening scene, for instance, in this movie is like a giant like Chinese dragon is shooting around New York, and they're using their proton pack and driving in the car.
That was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool, but again, it almost looks like too good. So we're not supposed to be like necessarily like sure if we're supposed to be kind of like laughing the way we were with the original Ghostbusters, or are we kind of like, wow, this is just cool looking like all other movies
Like
with
a Marvel
special
movie.
effects.
Yeah.
And Ghostbusters was kind of supposed to be funny. You were supposed to be like scared at moments as a kid and stuff. Like, oh my God, that was crazy. But in general, it was fun. And I think the effects being so much better now sucked the fun out of the Ghostbusters.
I wouldn't go that far. I don't agree with you there. I thought the effects were appropriate. They didn't take me out at any point. I think this was all, the shortcoming was in the script, or at least in the execution of the script.
We do need to talk about Bill Murray really quick, because we mentioned Dan Aykroyd. How'd you feel about Bill Murray? Was he just phoning it in?
Yeah. Yeah, Bill. But here's the thing.
That's how I felt. And I felt like he thought like, all right, I'm in this thing for, what would you say, a total of 15 minutes? He's in it enough where...
I think maybe more like 5.
He's in it enough where it's like, okay, Bill Murray pops up and he has, some funny lines. There's one moment where I laughed out loud from a Bill Murray taking a drink.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Which they ruined on Jimmy Fallon, by the way, if you saw that clip.
I didn't.
Yeah.
So good. It wasn't ruined for me. So that was good. But it felt like he was phoning it in. Like he didn't really want to be there. And that made it, unfortunate. It was a drag.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this.
And I know I'm sounding like I hate this movie with my review, but I didn't hate it, as I said.
Bill Murray kind of has been phoning it in since Lost in Translation.
Oh,
really? Name one where you're like, wow, Murray knocked it out of the park.
He's done some good work.
Has he?
Obviously, Steve Zissou was after.
All right, you got me there.
So
was after?
Yeah, 100%. All right.
He's a legend.
Jaw-dropping moment. You mentioned it, but I want to go into a little bit more detail, and it is the Patton Oswalt for me.
Okay. That's not mine. Go on.
Okay, so this was my favorite part. He works at the museum. They bring this...
that was the one part that had lore and depth.
Right, exactly. And Patton Oswalt, he just runs with it. Like, part of the charm of this scene is that he knows so much about, this artifact. And he goes into this story of, what happened to this god and how he was... captured. And during this time, they use this cool animation where they show the, what would you call that? Like it looked like almost when they
hieroglyphics.
Hieroglyphics, exactly what I was looking for, on the building, and they're showing like the god and how they took his horns off his head.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
That animation, as he was describing it, and that entire scene with Patton Oswalt was the highlight for me of the movie. I thought that was well done.
Listen, that Patton Oswalt scene was great. He's a linguist working at the New York Public Library, which is a big location from the first film. And then,
I'm saying museum, but yes, you're right.
It was the New York Public Library.
Yeah.
And they go into the library, and they're like, aren't we already in the library? And he's like, oh no, this just is for the tourists.
Right.
We're going to the real library.
The real library.
So they bring him down, I almost don't want to spoil it. That's where I'm going to stop.
I know, but then he has that giant book, which I love. He
like
opens
a tome.
up the book.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
That's I love thinking about that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like,
more of that.
Right. The layer of reality that we're on is like just the surface, and what lies beneath is just like this richness and tone that we mere mortals can't attain. But the Ghostbusters have these adventures. That was fun.
That was my jaw-dropping moment. How about you?
I agree with that one. Mine is the villain. Even though he was underused, this god who plugs these horns into the side of his head and they unfurl, and his form, how he's like this lanky, tall demon. Such a cool design. Like, wouldn't that make a great tattoo? When he's walking down the street and it's all dark and you just see his eyes, he's a scary looking dude.
Really is.
I like the villain. So I wish they had used him a little better.
Movie poster quote I went with, Frozen Empire is an appropriate title for this series that is stuck in the past. Boom! Nailed that one.
Oh, that's, yeah. I went with this resurrected franchise has busted out of its ghost trap.
How many Jaws, Matt K?
2 Jaws for me.
Wow, we are on the same plane. I was about to go 1.75, and then I wrote it, and I thought, I did have some fun, but I can't 100% recommend it. Middle of the road, 2 Jaws. I went 2 Jaws as well.
I think I was on 3 for Afterlife. I have to go back and listen.
Interesting. As far as kids go, kids appropriate, what age would you say?
I think this is pretty much in the same vein as the original Ghostbusters. It depends on your kid. I saw the original when I was about 10. So, God, is that right? No, I must have been earlier than that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think like 8 to 10-year-olds, it depends on the kid. If they're sensitive to certain parts, there are some scary moments, but generally it's fun. It's not that bad. And the good guys win. It's Ghostbusters. So.
It is. It's Ghostbusters. So the relic used inside of Ghostbusters was the sphere. Was that a good word to describe it?
Orb?
An orb. And inside there, this god was trapped. And I thought it was a pretty cool looking artifact, even though it's terrible once they get it, to extract the ghost. We see the bad stuff is about to happen.
Yeah.
Didn't really like that.
No.
But that is our topic, leads us into our topic this week is ancient artifacts, magical items that people find in movies. We always like this. I'm a sucker for it, for sure. But I had trouble coming up with a really good 5 because
it's tough.
It is tough.
It's tough if you try to stay to the real world.
Yes.
Did you?
No, I went all over the place. I got fantasy, I got superheroes, I got all kinds of stuff on my list.
Interesting. Superheroes,
but
huh?
I think it's in movies more than I could do the research. I was going through, my letterbox. I was looking at my DVD titles because I know it's in.
Every movie has a MacGuffin.
Right. And it's a lot of times it's not like so big of a plot point, but other times it is. And those are the ones that stick out the most. But I wanted to dig for those ones where it's like, oh, it might just be a small moment in the movie, but it's a really cool relic or something that they get. Tried to do my best. That said, I'm letting you lead off.
Well, I tried to stay away from magic. I tried to stay away from fantasy, but I failed on my my number 5 because this is a tough one to research. And we've done magical items. I'm pretty sure we've done magical weapons. Anyway, at number 5, I am going old school Matt K and going with the Infinity Stones. They're super important to the Marvel Universe in terms of the comic books, and I thought their translation to the screen was brilliant. This is what created the Marvel Universe, how each movie had its own stone and somehow they all connected. And when the bad guy, when Thanos gets the stones, you see their power. They're not nothing. They're not just a glow-in-the-dark suitcase like in Pulp Fiction. It's a MacGuffin that has weight, has consequences, and they each had their own interesting plot. Think about the Soul Stone when Red Skull is guarding a treasure he can never obtain, and Thanos has to throw Gamora off the cliff and stuff like that. These things each had their own story, and then they come together, and that has its own story. Thought it was well done. That's my number 5.
Wow. Infinity Stones.
That's not the superheroes that you
had.
had. Okay.
No, mine is different. At my number 5 pick, I am a sucker for watching just a lonely bank clerk find an artifact and turn his life completely wild. The bank clerk I'm talking about was the character's name was Stanley Ipkiss, played by Jim Carrey.
Wow.
In The Mask.
That's a good one, dude.
And the artifact is the mask, which contains the spirit of the Norse god Loki.
Right.
And he finds this mask in the river. I believe it's floating. He looks down in the water. There's this mask. He takes it home, and this spirit is inside the mask. And of course, it turns this, regular Joe Schmo bank clerk into a completely different wild man at night. And what I like about the mask, in a sense, is it also opened us up to Jim Carrey. Right?
Not to mention Cameron Diaz.
I was going to throw this in the fish tank. Was this Cameron Diaz's first role?
First appearance of Cameron Diaz.
100%.
I listen. Throw it in the fish tank. Let's be sure about these things.
I thought the same thing. This could have been. Obviously, we knew who Jim Carrey was.
Pre-rhinoplasty, Cameron Diaz as well, before her nose job.
All right. So, Jim Carrey, The Mask from the movie The Mask.
That is a great pick, Ryan.
What an artifact.
I'm a big fan. Now, Son of Mask or any of the sequels?
I have never seen anything else other than The Mask. And in fact, I've only seen The Mask, I think, one time.
So
I don't know if I've ever revisited it.
I've watched it a bunch of times. I love it. The only other Mask material I would recommend are the original Dark Horse comic books. It's a whole different story. It's really dark, like crimes happen. It doesn't go well for Stanley Ipkiss. And actually, The Mask goes through some different owners in the comics, too. It's pretty fun. All right, my number 4, I'm going with a famous artifact in the real world. It is the subject of many legends. It pops up in many movies, many stories. It's a mysterious item, even though we know exactly where it is. I'm going with the Mona Lisa. So recently, it was in Glass Onion, right? Which I think it plays a central role in that movie, even though it's more of a statement. It's not a relic. It's not an artifact that necessarily has any magical abilities, or it has something to say, doesn't it? Its mere presence in this movie says something. It's also used to some effect in the Da Vinci Code.
Oh, big on the Da Vinci Code, for sure.
Right. So there's so many people who believe there's hidden messages in many of Da Vinci's paintings, but especially the Mona Lisa. I think it's a real world thing that has this unbelievable air of mystery and legend. I haven't never seen it with my own eyes. You?
I have.
You've traveled.
Yes.
What was that like?
Pretty damn cool. I mean, there's only been like less than 10 artworks that have almost like moved me to, emotionally. I think because of the power of the artwork, like the David, for instance, when I was in Italy. And when you finally lay eyes on the David, it's like, oh my God, it's gorgeous. And how many times I've seen it referenced and talked about.
Yeah, and this man carved it with a chisel.
Yeah, it's like, holy crap. I was like, I could almost feel like tears coming out of my eyes just in awe of the artwork.
Da Vinci, he was pretty good.
I felt that way with the Mona Lisa. When I saw it, I was like, wow, I'm looking at the Mona Lisa of all, finally made it here.
You clapped eyes on it, right?
Yeah, and I've got a nice picture with it.
Is it small? Is it about the size of your laptop?
A little bit bigger than that, but it is, yes, as everybody says, way smaller than you think. Like you're expecting
some grand work.
Yeah, and it's not that.
It's like an 8x10.
So
there's
the
my
Mona
number
Lisa,
4.
your number 4. Here's my superhero pick. It comes from a movie just last year, so we're not going to go into it too much. But we liked this one, and so did Mark Dusick. And again, anytime a character is breaking into a museum to get something that people think is just a regular artifact, but yet it has magical powers, I'm a sucker for this. Shazam, the Fury of the Gods, opens up with the Daughters of Titan, Titan Atlas, break into the museum in Athens, Greece, and steal the wizard's broken staff.
Wait, wasn't that in part 2?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's the Fury of the Gods.
Okay,
yeah.
My bad. Go on.
And they get that broken staff, and eventually that allows them to actually take powers away from Shazam and his gang. Love that. And I know it happens also in Black Panther, but I forget
There's always a MacGuffin.
Right. But that same exact thing, basically, where they're going into a museum to get like an artifact that everybody's just like walking by and thinks like, oh, it's nice. It's in glass. And no, it's got magical powers.
Yeah. Everything in there has magical powers.
I love it. So that was my number 4 from Shazam.
We should do a list of the best ways superheroes have turned into superheroes. I guess that would be origin stories. All right. At number 3, this is fictional, but I'm just going with it. This is also a classic Matt K pick, I feel. The Necronomicon.
I thought you would have this.
Did you?
Yeah.
Probably most well-known for being used in the Evil Dead movies. But it is not only in the Evil Dead movies. Of course, those who like to read will be familiar with it from H.P. Lovecraft's stories. And it was also in a movie called Necronomicon from 1993. I've never seen that one. But Evil Dead. the book. My favorite scene involving the Necronomicon is when Ash goes through the graveyard and he has to recite the incantation to take it, and he flubs the last line and takes it anyway. It's great. The fake book bites him. Everything about that Necronomicon, tremendous.
Awesome. I liked it in the last one. What was it? Evil Dead Rise.
I didn't see Evil Dead Rise.
Oh, you got to see Evil Dead Rise.
The Necronomicon's in it?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's referenced, you know. It's awesome. My number 3 also is a book.
Okay.
We didn't plan this.
No, weird.
We really didn't.
Yeah.
But my number 3 is a book, and it comes from us from a movie back in 1999. I put it on my list the last couple of Halloweens, and I still haven't gotten back to rewatching this movie. But I remember being a big fan of this one. The book that I'm talking about is called The 9 Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And it is the book from the Johnny Depp movie, The Ninth Gate. Do you know this one?
I don't think so.
The book is supposed to be written by this author and co-written by the devil. And the book is supposed to be able to summon the devil, is the idea. And Johnny Depp plays a New York book dealer hired to track down this book. And then, of course, all this evil unfolds. But the book...
What year was the movie?
1999.
Yeah, I think I do remember this movie.
The Ninth Gate.
It wasn't like very well received.
I was going to say, can we throw that in the fish tank, KP? What the Rotten Tomato score is? I agree with you. It's probably like middle of the road. You know, it's like a 50%er.
In 1999, you could not afford to be a middle of the road.
99, super strong year. So this fell by the wayside. But I do think, you know, for a good horror movie, and for this list in particular, when we're talking about like old books or something that has like a power, to find like a book that was supposed to be written in the 17th century that can summon the devil is a pretty cool concept.
It is a cool concept. And who hasn't had that fantasy of walking into some like forgotten bookstore and like blowing the dust off some ancient tome and finding out that it's a well of power, you know, like a never-ending story, you know?
Sure.
That kind of thing.
I don't know if you've ever been to Myopic Books in Wicker Park.
Yeah, that's a fun store.
Wow. I was just in there donating some books when I had a day off. And I went in there and I was like, man, I got to come back. It'd been years. I live, you know, right in the neighborhood. I should go in there.
Yeah.
And it is, for the jawheads that don't know, obviously what we're talking about, it's one of these multi-storied.
At least
two stories. I think 3. You could go
there's
downstairs. There's a basement also. And I mean, thousands and thousands of books. No new books. They're all used or donated. It's awesome. And I mean, exactly what you're talking about. You can pull something out there and blow dust off it.
God, it's been a long time since I've been in Myopic. You're right. It's a treasure. I also like Quimby's, by the way, but nowhere near as cool as Myopic. All right, swinging it around to my number 2, and you could probably guess that this was going to be on my list. I am going with the puzzle box from Hellraiser, also known as, well, one configuration of it in particular, the Lament configuration, calls the Cenobites, opens a gateway to hell or some kind of S&M universe. Some weird things going on with those Cenobites. And who am I to judge, Ryan? But, man, do you remember the first time you saw Hellraiser?
I mean, I watched it as a kid because my brother showed it to me.
Was it like a dare?
Oh,
right?
It scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And then I remember just telling you, I didn't rewatch it until I think a year or 2 ago. And it was such a blast rewatching it. But I was so afraid to ever go back to Hellraiser because of it.
Yeah, this isn't your Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, this isn't your Friday the 13th. Like a slasher movie, they can be gory. They can be kind of scary. They can even give you nightmares. You know, Freddy was a great villain. But Hellraiser was scary on a different level, man. It was like Exorcist level scary. You know,
I agree.
The guy with no skin and just like everything about it felt depraved. You know, like I shouldn't be seeing this movie. It's that good.
Really good concept. I like the new Hellraiser that they did. It was a fun watch on Hulu.
But the box, we've referenced it on the show, right?
Many
What's
times.
in the box?
Loved it.
So would you have that as a toy, as a replica?
Might be a little too creepy for me.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially if you could actually manipulate it.
You know, I got a lot of cool things in my little screening room there. I don't know if I'd put the box in there.
Ooh, now I know what to get you for Christmas.
You
you got a birthday? Oh no, it just passed.
Yeah. My number 2 comes from a Nick Cage movie. And I know this one also, probably rotten on the tomato. It's not that fresh. But again, the concept was so cool. The movie is 2009. It's called Knowing. Now,
You didn't go National Treasure.
no, I didn't go National Treasure. That's too easy. Knowing is probably a movie not everybody has seen because, again, it didn't get the greatest reviews. But the concept with this was one that really drew me in. It was they were opening up a time capsule from an elementary school from 50 years prior.
Nice.
And
Who didn't do that in grade school?
right? I
Yeah.
love a good time capsule, right? And so inside the time capsule, like the students at 50 years prior, one of the students was writing a series of numbers on a piece of paper, and right before the last number, the project time ends, and she doesn't write down the last number and puts this scroll, if you will, into this time capsule. Somehow I forget, but it comes across now 50 days later. They open up the time capsule.
50 years later.
50 years later, and all the strange occurrences are taking place in the world. And Nick Cage, I don't know if he's working at the school, but he gets this paper and he realizes that it's a list of disasters and things that are going to go wrong in the world.
Just the date?
Yeah, like the date and how many people are going to die, and you can
There's a
look
pattern.
into it, and there's a pattern. And it in there it predicted 9/11, it predicted certain plane crashes, so on and so forth. And it's like, wow, what an awesome concept! And he's trying to figure out,
The next one?
the next one. Knowing is the name of the movie. Now,
Wow, that does sound good.
the concept is the best part of what I'm describing, because the end product is only decent. Again, this is probably like 45% rotten, 50% rotten, middle of the rotor, but
High concept.
it was a solid idea.
All right, here we are. Our number one, Ancient Relics. And I am going with Harrison Ford.
Which one?
No. He's the ancient.
I was going to do one of those jokes as well. Sure.
No, I am kidding. I am going with a Harrison Ford movie. And dude, listen, you got to go with Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And the relic is the Ark of the Covenant.
It's a great one.
It is, really. I mean, everything about the Ark of the Covenant remains mysterious throughout the entire movie. They never really fully understand what the Ark can do. But this is what I was talking about before. They have to get the amulet, which attaches to the staff, which leads them to the map.
I actually like that part probably the most,
I
when
do
they have to put that staff in the ground and that
The
tells you
sun-
where the covenant is
at the right time.
Oh, fantastic. That's my favorite part.
Totally. That is so cool. That adventure, it still holds up to this day. But the Ark at the end, when they open it up and all the Nazis' faces melt off, that's another part of a movie that always scared the crap out of me. When what's that Nazi's name? Can we throw that in the fish tank, KP? The main Nazi bad guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark. He had like a name like Morgoth or Belloc or something like that. I forget. I know those are Tolkien names. Anyway, the Ark was so cool. Its design was so cool. And then at the end, how it gets hidden in the warehouse and like you just see this vast warehouse. And that also gets your imagination going.
Right.
Like how many amazing relics are in this warehouse. So cool. That
Nice.
movie's a timeless classic.
So I would have put all the Indiana Jones, but I felt a little too
but
easy.
that's the best one.
It is. But
Relic-wise.
honorable mention, I put all Indiana Jones relics because I even liked
The Dial of Destiny.
Dial of Destiny. I was
Sure.
okay with it.
Crystal Skulls?
Decent.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? But my number one, I went horror. So you're a fan.
okay.
And I actually went with what is called the Lasser glass, which is the mirror from the movie Oculus.
Wow. That's a weird one, but okay. At number one.
Yeah. I don't know why I put it all the way at number one, but I did. It's sitting there. I'm reading my notes, and it's my number one. It's the Lasser glass, which is this like antique looking
Over Annabelle?
full length mirror, and inside the mirror is a power to drive those in the immediate vicinity dangerously insane.
Was
might I
this
say.
not a Mila Kunis vehicle?
No, she is not in this movie.
Okay.
There, homicides, death. Anybody who's around this mirror, bad things are going to happen. This is directed by Mike Flanagan, who I'm big fan of, Haunting of Hill House, so on and so forth. And I went online and I looked at the description of the Lasser glass, and I got this. It's a large antique mirror, elegant but otherwise unremarkable in appearance. It is at least 400 years old, and its frame is carved from a single piece of Bavarian black cider.
Cedar?
Sorry, cedar. Yes. That's what is the description on the fan sites. I love when people really dig into these things.
Yeah.
I was a fan of Oculus. It's one of the good horror movies of modern day.
I don't know. I wouldn't have put that at number one, but it's fine.
Only honorable mentions I had were the Indiana Jones relics. Did you have any?
I did not. We'll have to find a map to a key to a hidden trove where the rest of our lists are.
Or we can just ask the Jawheads. Did we miss one, guys? If we did and you have Twitter pulled up, shoot us a tweet or an email, feedback@cinemajaw.com. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have another review. Ricky Stanicky plus Stump the Kabinski with $5 on the line. Woohoo!
I'm ready.
Stick with us.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Hey, Jawheads. I know we threw in a major tease a couple of weeks ago about the Coneheads. Well, we are nothing if not people who deliver. So we're making good on the promise. Here is a clip from the Coneheads, starring Dan Aykroyd. Enjoy.
This is a primitive device. We must find one with the necessary components to communicate our distress to Ramulak.
When the High Master hears about the destruction of our ship, he will be most displeased.
Affirmative. He will surely cut off my plug and hand it to me. But do not despair, Primat. We will be rescued. Until then, we must adapt. When the hydrogen droplets have ceased, we will go forth and live undetected on Earth amongst the blunt skulls.
Eldar, how can we live among the blunt skulls?
We will blend in.
Hey, Jawheads, I know at the end of every podcast we ask you to follow us on social media. However, I want to point out that we are doing some fun videos on Instagram, the Reels. So go on to Instagram, make sure you follow Cinemajaw, and you can see part of the show being taped. We're putting clips out each and every week, so follow us at Cinemajaw on Instagram and really everywhere on social media.
Drinks, sparkling drinks, chocolate, dandy, 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 dandy.
And we're back on Cinemajaw. Ryan, we're talking about Ancient Relics. We're talking about Ghostbusters. We're talking about Ricky Stanicky. We also threw a few things into the fish tank, didn't we? Let's open up that fish tank.
Wait a moment! It's fish! Isn't it?
DC! Wake up! Wake up! No, Pat, it's a giant glass bowl. Hey, there's some fish folk.
Who's coming with me besides Flipper? Here.
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
We're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hello, thank you both so much. It is delightful to be breathing in this fresh air. I do have a few grievances, and it's mostly with when you guys were reading your notes. I swear to you, both Ryan and Matt opened their notebooks, did a big buff of air, just like they were saying at Myopic Book, and it, where does it go? Directly into me. I don't have a filter for this. My air quality is already lesser than. I don't understand.
Wait, I missed a spot. Here we. There's some more for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, to save me from this never-ending and ceaseless agony of dust, let's jump right on into, was The Mask the first Cameron Diaz appearance? And it was.
Wow, film debut.
Very, very first. She was in The Mask in 1994, 12 years before the surfboarding accident that impacted her breathing and evoked the need for reconstructive surgery in the form of rhinoplasty.
There you go.
Surfing accident.
See?
Right,
See?
right.
Well, Matt brought it up. That was... I figured I could look into that. There's actually a lot of films. Her rhinoplasty was in 2006. Besides the point, what is the Rotten Tomatoes score on the Ninth Gate? What did you say, Ryan? It wasn't favorable. But
Yeah, my guess was somewhere right around like 50, 55%.
43.
43, so a little bit less than I thought.
Yeah.
I will say audience score was 58, but critics 53.
Or 43,
I did try
yeah.
and check if it was streaming, and you can only rent it. So
Hmm.
I think even Johnny's a little ashamed. And that dude's court trial was so shameful. So that's all in public.
Right. You got to really. It's got to be really bad to bring a blush to Johnny's face.
Oh yeah, Captain Jack Sparrow and the Lone Ranger. Is that what else? Besides,
No, I don't think he was in the Lone Ranger. Was he?
He was.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't he? Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't he doing like native face? Besides the we're doing
Probably,
so
yeah. We're in the weeds.
Who is the main Nazi from Raiders of the Lost Ark? That would be Major Arnold Tote, played by Ronald Lacey. Tote, like the bag.
That crazy does not sound familiar to me.
I know. I just remember him wearing those weird wired glasses.
He's got to have a nickname in that movie. Anyway, doesn't matter. Thank you for looking it up, KP.
Was that everything, KP?
That's all we got, unless you wanted to throw something else at me.
No. Next week on Cinemajaw, we already know what we're going to be discussing. We got 2 reviews for the Jawheads. We have Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire.
Nice.
And we have, back into our anniversary reviews, 40-year anniversary of The Last Starfighter, a movie that came out in 1984. Me and Matt, very big fans.
Near and dear to my heart.
Of The Last Starfighter, but we both talked about it and had not seen it in many, many years. We're going to rewatch that and give a review next week.
Stoked.
I am too. Going to be a good episode next week. All right, KP, jump back in that fish tank. Get better.
You bet.
I threw some vitamin C in there, an emergency in your fish
Thank
tank.
you.
Yeah.
It's fizzy. I love it.
There you go.
The Farrelly Brothers gave us some classic comedies. Something About Mary, Dumb and Dumber, Kingpin, to name a few. As time has gone on, these type of crude comedies seem to have disappeared. So I was happy to see Peter Farrelly return to the genre for the Amazon Prime film Ricky Stanicky. Could a movie about a made-up friend starring Zac Efron make us laugh like we did in the 90s? Matt K and I cracked a beer and gave it a spin to find out.
Stanicky, what up, man? Are you serious? Have someone call me when you get out of surgery, all right?
You should drive out there. Ricky's been there for you guys your whole lives.
The devil's in the details, my friend.
It worked.
Atlantic City, here we come.
What we got?
Ricky's cancer's back.
Why does it have to be cancer? Won't everybody get worried?
Yeah, and that's going to take us right into the World Series.
To Ricky Stanicky, the best friend we never had.
Ricky Stanicky opens up with 3 kids attempting a Halloween gag on a quiet neighbor. The old poop in a flaming bag trick. It doesn't go well. However, their idea on who to blame it on is great. They invent a friend named Ricky Stanicky to take the heat. 20 years later, these same childhood friends still use Ricky as a scapegoat to get out of things they don't want to do with their wives and families. However, everyone is starting to catch on, and they demand to finally meet the one and only Ricky Stanicky. Instead of coming clean, these guys hire an actor played by John Cena to play the part. Hijinks ensue. I'll say this. I like the idea behind the plot, and the casting of John Cena in the role of Ricky Stanicky is hilarious. I really like the first time we meet him in Atlantic City, and I also love his interaction with their boss, played by William H. Macy. Now, Zac Efron plays the straight guy here, and it's not quite up to par with, say, Ben Stiller back in the day, but it was serviceable. Same can be said for his friends, played by Andrew Santino and Jermaine Fowler. They did not tank the movie, but did not help elevate the comedy either. I did find many of the jokes to be funny, but some of the bigger swings the film takes, such as seeing a girl get her hair caught in a ball return in a bowling alley, didn't connect for me. It's also a little long-winded for this type of film, but for a movie on a streaming service, I am slightly recommending this one. Matt?
It's half a Farrelly Brothers movie. That's what I'm going to say. I didn't even know that walking into this room. And when you said it, I'm like, that makes total sense. It's like there are some moments in this movie when I'm like, that is some funny stuff. I sat down totally ready for that 90s gross out humor. Kingpin is one of my favorites. This ain't that. It's a little disappointing. There are some funny moments. I disagree with you on the Friends. I think they do supply some of the humor. One of them is the like crass humor, and the other guy is supposed to be the heart. They're the angel and devil on his shoulders to the straight man. I agree. Also, John Cena was pretty good in this.
He was.
He's pretty funny. There's a few musical interludes. His real identity is Rock Hard Rod.
What a name!
Who does a dog and pony show, an X-rated filthy show in Atlantic City at like some backwater casino. And boy, oh boy, they cut to that a few times, and every time I was like laughing my ass off.
I thought that was hysterical.
That's probably the best part of the movie. And the baby joke where the guy's got his shirt off and right after his wife gives birth. That was gross and funny at the same time. But Kingpin, this ain't. It's just not quite there. Like half of Farrelly. That's where we're at.
I love the joke about John Cena and his actual day job. And the first time they meet him, he is just such a strange character. I love that at one point he walks away because he wants to get like a free meal from the guys at the bar. And then he leaves the guys, and Zac Efron goes to chase him down. He just wants to talk to him for a second. And Cena's reaction right away is like, "These are my wings.
Yeah.
They're mine. Get away from me." Like, whoa. He's just trying to talk to you, buddy. I love their interaction and how strange of a character he was. But part of it, for instance, was his character was supposed to be an alcoholic, and then he was sobering up. And they would play some things like that for like a quick gag, but then it just faded away. Like,
yeah,
it never rematerialized.
It kind of comes back, but the ending of this is ridiculously stupid. Like, just ridiculously stupid. Like, Kingpin is stupid, but it also kind of makes sense in a way. This is just like, what are you talking about? Like, all these people would not be in a room together. Like, what?
You always got to somehow sum it up, though.
I guess.
I think they had a great idea of three guys always using an imaginary friend to get out of stuff. And that's the setup in the trailer, and it's really the setup in the movie, too. And that part is very enjoyable. It's like, yeah, it is very funny. I also think the idea of hiring an impersonator like John Cena's character is great. It's just some of the other bigger moments in the movie that they go for, like the big laughs. I guess when they're pointing out to William H. Macy that he's making these hand gestures that
was pretty good. You're hair dicking.
They call it air dicking. Pretty funny.
Yeah, there were some moments. There were some really good moments.
Yeah. I wonder, too, if our tastes haven't changed, though, a lot, too. And I do think that Zac Efron was just kind of miscast here.
It's a little weak.
Yeah, it could have been a little bit stronger with, like, the talent of, say, like Ben Stiller when he was the perfect straight man in so many of those damn movies. I mean, you know, we're referencing Something About Mary because the Farrelly brothers. But you look right in that era, Ben Stiller was the straight man, and
Meet the Parents.
Yeah, like 40 comedies in a row, and he was just perfect at it.
Yeah, he killed.
Yeah, and Zac Efron doesn't have that talent at all. So I think that
he's good. I mean,
I'm not complaining, saying he's absolutely terrible. I'm just saying he didn't elevate it.
He didn't elevate it, but John Cena did. Does John Cena have a career in comedy now?
Well, between this and now the Oscar bit where he walked out onto the Oscars.
Well, and Peacemaker, right? Like
naked. Yeah, and Peacemaker. I think he's in that range right now where, very much like when Arnold Schwarzenegger, we realized that he could be funny, right?
True.
All of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, a guy like this has some comedy chops and it's working.
I will say that Efron's lost a little weight since the Iron Claw, right? He's not all beefed up anymore.
True.
Still look pretty jacked, though.
Yeah.
He looks smaller, though. Am I wrong? I mean,
no, I agree. But I mean, all perception, the movie, obviously, Iron Claw was trying to make him look super big.
Movie magic.
Yes. So let's talk jaw-dropping moment. Was there one in Ricky Stanicky for you?
Yeah. It's I don't want to spoil the joke, so I will just say when Ricky does Alice Cooper. You know what I'm talking about? Dude, and some of those moments got stuck in my head. Like I was singing them out loud. I probably shouldn't have been, walking down to the train and I'm just humming and start singing the lyrics. Funny.
That was good stuff. Mine is when William H. Macy. Okay, so William H. Macy plays Zac Efron and his buddy's boss. And originally at the party when he meets Ricky Stanicky, played by John Cena, Cena calls out that he has hair plugs, which is hilarious. Just a moment, like he's shocked that he's just, so crass and just talking about it out loud.
Straight, yeah. It gives it to him straight, yeah.
But eventually he warms up to this. And my jaw-dropping moment is when William H. Macy calls Zac Efron and this guy into the office, and he starts talking about, hey, your buddy Ricky Stanicky. And they're like, oh, yeah, sorry about that guy, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, that guy, he's got brass balls. That's why I hired him. That entire exchange, and they realize now they're way over their heads because their boss is actually hiring this guy that they had hired to be their fake friend. I love that, like, kind of like,
right.
Dare
Comedy
I say,
of errors.
Three's Company moment,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Movie poster quote I went with, it's no kingpin, but there's something about Ricky Stanicky that'll make you laugh.
Oh, man. I went with, this is half a Farrelly short of a good movie.
So this may shock you. I went 2.5 Jaws on Ricky Stanicky.
It is a little shocking because I went 1.5 Jaws on Ricky Stanicky.
What?
Maybe I'm being stingy.
Listening to you talk about it, you clearly had a few laughs with it.
I had a few laughs, but the ending was so weak.
And it was long for, as long as it was, they could have came up with a better ending. But
you could convince me to bump it up to 2 Jaws.
All right, give it 2 Jaws.
Fine, but that's as far as I go.
Ricky Stanicky deserves 2 Jaws.
All right, maybe it does.
It's streaming right
Cena's
now
good.
On Amazon Prime. If you're looking for a throwback kind of comedy, Farrelly Brother style, again, half of Farrelly. I like the way you phrased it, Matt, but it is free on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, it's like a half a Cohen.
Yeah.
Those movies can be okay.
All right, so I see the imaginary $5 on the table that you did not have in your wallet. That is on the line for Stump the Dubinsky.
It's actually an ancient relic. This $5 bill will transport you to a world where Matt actually has $5.
So I wrote these questions, obviously, before you decided to open up your mouth. So I didn't change them. I've been sitting in front of you this entire
I'm always
time.
suspect of what's going on that laptop screen. You probably have like 12 different questions.
Right. But I wrote these prior to, and I forgot to mention, I was going to call it Tricky Dan Aykroyd movie trivia.
You son of a bitch.
I think these are rather tough because I know you know Dan,
I do.
I mean, you've sat and had, you've broke bread with him.
I've talked about Herkimer Diamonds with him.
Right. So I thought, well, let's make this a little tricky. So here we go. Are you ready?
I am.
Question number 1. And again, Jawheads, he needs 3 or more not to be stumped. Question number 1. Aykroyd made one movie with Macaulay Culkin. Name the film. Dan Aykroyd, Macaulay Culkin. He's thinking. I've never seen him think this much. When there's $5 on the line.
That's not it. It's like, I know this.
Right in your wheelhouse.
My Girl.
My Girl. That is correct. 1-0.
Wow.
That's
Can you
awesome.
believe I came up with that?
1 for 1. Good, Matt. Question 2. Aykroyd made one movie with Robert Redford. It came out in 1992. Name the film. What the heck would Dan Aykroyd be doing in a Robert Redford film?
Or maybe Robert Redford was in a Dan Aykroyd film.
Aha!
Shoot.
I think you probably have seen this movie. That'll be my hint. Not positive, but I think you probably would have seen this. 1992.
92. Dan Aykroyd, Robert Redford. Does that have anything to do with gambling?
No.
Is Robert Redford in Dragnet?
All right. Is that your answer?
Yeah.
Tom Hanks was in Dragnet.
I know.
Yeah. But no, we were looking for Sneakers.
Yeah, shit.
You did see that movie,
Of
didn't
course
you?
I've seen Sneakers. If I had been given
Sneakers.
enough time, I would have gotten that.
Sneakers. Good flick.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Well, let me slow my roll there. It's a good flick.
Good flick. All right. Matt is 1 for 2. This is getting interesting. Question 3. Dan Aykroyd and Chris Farrelly appear in 2 films together. They came out in 93 and 95. Name both.
Tommy Boy.
That's 1.
Beverly Hills Ninja. Well, then it's Black Sheep. Really?
Because you were right, Tommy Boy. You're thinking of a Chris Farley movie. But now, back to flip it around. Think of Chris Farley in a Dan Aykroyd movie. That's how you should have thought of it. And you didn't get it right, but we played a clip earlier. He was in Coneheads.
Chris Farley was in Coneheads. Yeah, he sure was.
Yep.
Wow. That's where they met.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Matt, you are down to 2 questions.
You should give me half credit for that one.
No.
If there's another question where I have to name 2 things, I
How
only
about
name one,
this?
I get it right.
The last question I wrote has a bonus. All you do have to mention is 1, but if you get both, I'll give you 2 points.
Fine.
All right.
Fair.
All right.
Yep. I accept.
All right. Question 4. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Annette Bening made her film debut in a Dan Aykroyd film. It came out in 1988. Name the movie. Annette Bening, the great Annette Bening.
Yeah.
Big screen debut.
There's 2 possible answers to this. 1 is Couch Trip, and 2 is Dr. Detroit. But I'm pretty sure Dr. Detroit was in the 90s. So I'm going with Couch Trip.
We're looking for The Great Outdoors. The Great Outdoors.
Really?
had
That's Annette
Bening.
Bening's?
Yes. Unbelievable.
I didn't even know she was in The Great Outdoors. I just watched that this summer.
Well, here we go. Last question. You can get both correct and you can still win. So you got that going for
Tricky
you.
Dan Aykroyd trivia.
It is. Dan Aykroyd appears in 2 films with Chicago's own John Cusack.
Okay. I got one of them right away.
All you need to do is name 1, but if you get both, I'll give you 2 points.
Grosse Pointe Blank.
That's 1.
And the other one.
Yeah. The other one's really tricky, unfortunately.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you a few questions. Is it like just a cameo from Aykroyd?
I'm not at liberty to say.
Okay. Is it John Cusack in a Dan Aykroyd movie or Dan Aykroyd in a John Cusack
More
movie?
Dan Aykroyd in a John Cusack movie.
And can I get a year?
And I don't have a year written down, but I will say that it's not like your typical John Cusack movie. You know what that means. You know the typical John Cusacks.
Is it it's not the Beach Boys one?
No.
Okay. What was the name of that Beach Boys one?
Well, you got to throw me on the spot here. I'll come up with it.
Hold My Head Underwater. All right. Not your typical John Cusack movie. So that rules out like all the ones where he works in a record store or goes skiing or wins the girl or draws a picture.
Right. The Beach Boys movie was called Love and Mercy.
Love and Mercy.
He is not in Love and Mercy. All right. I don't think you're going to get it. So let's move it on here.
Okay, 2012.
Yeah. No. We're looking for War Inc.
Never would have gotten
I told you. So you do come up short. I do win the $5.
All right. So. I let it be known that on the next, well, not on the next draw, but on the draw prior to, subsequent to the next draw, you will find out that I paid Ryan.
How exciting.
Yeah. So 2 episodes from now is another way of saying that.
Good stuff. Well, it brings us to the end of a very fun and entertaining job, man.
Does.
First and foremost, we got to thank our editor, our producer, under the weather, still here, KP.
Hey, listen, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else on a night like tonight.
You probably should be in bed.
That's most times, yeah.
We also
I think medically, my therapist probably would say, like, well, these 2 get you into so much trouble, but it's good trouble, right?
Depends on who you ask.
We also want to thank our Patreons. Thanks for supporting the show. If you want to join us over there, patreon.com/Cinemajaw. It would mean the world to us, so go ahead and join us there.
We're doing fun stuff.
We are. Or you can always just leave us a review, a star rating, wherever you're listening to us, whatever podcast app you're using. Those things help attract new listeners for small podcasts like Cinemajaw.
And it's free.
It is. It's very easy.
Just do it.
So do that. Until next week, I'm Ry the Movie Guy.
I'm Matt Kay, and keep on jawing about the movies.